How's that? Can everybody see it? Okay, great.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Hi, I'm Virginia Donahue. I'm the Executive Director of San Francisco Animal Care and Control. And welcome to our meeting tonight about urban coyotes. We have with us on the panel, Deb Campbell. She is media and volunteer and outreach coordinator for Animal Care and Control. We have Stephanie Pone. She's our acting lieutenant in field services and our wildlife specialist. That's also from Animal Care and Control. From Rec and Park, we have Christopher Campbell, who's the acting natural resource manager. And we have Spencer Potter, who's Rec and Park's natural resource specialist. So we're going to be available to answer questions after the presentation. And you can put questions in the chat. So as you go through, Deb is going to be kind of sorting them in and putting them into groups. And we'll answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. So Kelly Hendricks is our presenter tonight. Kelly is with Project Coyote. She is the let me get a right title, Ranching with Wildlife Coordinator. Kelly has done this talk for the city many times. She's a rancher up in Marin, and I think you'll find it educational and helpful. And we'll be available for questions afterwards. So Kelly, take it away.
Thank you, Virginia, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm excited to talk to you tonight about coyotes, and hopefully everybody will learn something. As Virginia said, why is this not, let me hit play here. As Virginia said, I'm the Ranching with Wildlife Coordinator for Project Coyote. Let me see if I can get this. Oh, there we go. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Project Coyote, we're a nationwide nonprofit, and our mission is to promote compassionate coexistence between people and wildlife using education, science, and advocacy. And we advocate for all native carnivores. And these pics are just an excuse to throw some of my photography up here of wildlife. So my husband and I are predator-friendly ranchers. My husband's managed the cow-calf operation for the ranch we live on, which is in Sonoma County, for over, well, close to 30 years now. And over those years, we've raised thousands of calves alongside mountain lions and coyotes and other predators without ever killing a single predator. So I'm also a longtime volunteer with Sonoma County Wildlife, and I've worked in the hospital, and now I primarily concentrate on fostering orphan wildlife for them so that they can eventually be released into the wild. And every year I foster about 50 orphan babies. So finally, I'm also the vice president of Little Trooper Ranch, which is a animal rescue organization in Sonoma County. And we concentrate mostly on adopting out small dogs that we have gotten from overcrowded shelters and high-risk situations. So the reason I am telling you guys about the work I do, which I do all on a volunteer basis, and it's a lot, but the reason I do it is because I'm passionate about helping all animals. Sometimes people will say, oh, you're just one of those people that's just crazy about coyotes and don't care about anything else, and that's why you want everybody to save coyotes, but that's not the case. I love all animals, livestock, pets, and and wildlife, and I want to help humans too. So that's why I'm doing all this work, and I've devoted my life to this over the last many years. So, and because of that, one of the reasons I do this is because recent studies show that on our planet now, the 96% of the mammal biomass is humans, our pets, and livestock, and only, I don't know why that did that, and only 4% is, oh, I see, it clicked on that link. I was never done that before. Now I got to figure out how to go backwards on this. Let me try this. Only 4% is wildlife. So my view is if we can't learn to get along with just the 4% of wildlife that's left, we can do better. And I'm hoping that what I show you tonight will help help us on our coexistence path with wildlife. Now I've got to figure out, I wonder if I click out of this, if it's going to shoot me out of Zoom altogether.
Can you just reduce it?
I don't know how. Let me see. Just be patient with me, people. I'm never had a problem like this before. Should I try to click out of the whole thing, or you think that's going to take me out of Zoom completely?
Let's see.
I don't know why it clicked on the link. It's so weird. I bet you it just takes me out of this, but boy, that would really. Oh, let me just go forward. We don't need to go back. Let me see if that does anything. Nope. Okay. All right, should I do it?
Angela A says it shouldn't take you out. One of our
What's
attendees.
that?
One of our attendees said you should be good. Shouldn't
Oh,
take you
okay.
out.
Oh, okay, good, perfect. Okay, so I just have to hit sharing again, right? Why is technology such a, oh, here it is. Okay,
I see.
I got it now.
You got it? Okay.
I got it now. I think I'm good. Okay, perfect. So the first thing people do, we need to know is what do coyotes look like? Now, most of us have seen coyotes in the wild at this point, but still there's a lot of misinformation. Most people think that they are much, much bigger than they are, but in California, coyotes only average 25 pounds. However, every week I get people telling me that they saw a 50 or 75 pound coyote and they're insistent about it. So why does that happen? It's because coyotes have these huge coats. It's over 5 inches thick. And these two pictures over here on the right are not the same coyote, but it's a good representation of the difference their coat can look from winter to spring. So they get these huge coats in the winter and it can make them look really big. When you see them in summer and spring is more representative of their actual size, which is about the size of a small border collie. And you always hear of coyotes that are about the size of a German Shepherd, but German Shepherds are 3 times the size of coyotes. So, and Eastern coyotes are a little bit bigger. On average, they're about 10 pounds heavier than Western coyotes. So how do we know how much we weigh? Because we kill tons of coyotes every year. In the United States, we kill about a coyote a minute. And many of those coyotes are killed in things called wildlife killing contests or coyote killing contests, where a bunch of hunters get together and they just kill as many coyotes as they can for cash and prizes. And one of the biggest of those contests takes place in Pennsylvania. And it's been going on for 20 years. And the biggest coyote ever killed there was like 53 pounds. That was in 2019. And they've killed thousands upon thousands of coyotes and weighed them all. And that's an Eastern coyote. So that would be similar to if you found a 43-pound coyote in California, that would be a huge coyote. So why are they here? People say, well, I've lived here forever and I've never seen coyotes. And all of a sudden I'm seeing a bunch of them. So that must mean that they're overpopulated. But that's not really the case. If you understand how this all came to be, when European settlers came, we eliminated all the big carnivores with the wolves and the mountain lions and the grizzly bears, and those were all coyotes' natural predators. And coyotes at those times were living mostly in the prairies. And we also cut down tons of trees for our grazing and agricultural pursuits. So, and coyotes kind of like wide open spaces more than wolves do. So when the wolves and the big predators were gone and the landscape was more open, like the prairies, it became perfect habitat for coyotes, and they started expanding their populations all across the continent. And that leads us till today, where they've now eked into just about every urban space that we have on. And I think the only place they haven't gotten to so far is Hawaii. And now they're even eking into South America. So the other things that urban sprawl, there's less and less wild places for wildlife to live. And our urban spaces have things like cemeteries and parks and schools and, a lot of green belts where coyotes and other wildlife like to feel comfortable in. And attractants. wherever there's humans, there's lots of rodents, and coyotes, that's their favorite food. So, and lethal controls have helped their populations to expand, which sounds counterintuitive. How could killing coyotes cause their populations to expand? I'm going to show you right here. So a normal stable pack of coyotes has the mom, the dad, which is called the alpha pair, and then the pups of this year, and then some juveniles that have not left the pack yet to form their own packs. So they're all family members, they're all related. And in that pack, only the mom and the dad breed. All the others are behaviorally sterile. So that's a nice stable little ecosystem there. And those packs they're very territorial, and they'll keep other coyotes out of those areas that they're living. Very territorial. So if those packs are shattered through lethal controls, what happens is those coyotes all go in separate directions, and all pack members will now begin breeding. And the younger coyotes can start breeding at younger ages and have larger litters in which more pups survive. And there's more resources for the remaining coyotes. And coyotes have biological mechanisms within them that signal to them, we have more resources, bigger litters, and it can actually expand the populations. So when you have stable coyote populations, you have normal pack sizes, which are 4 to 6 pups, like you see here. But in an area where lethal controls are being done on coyotes, you can lead to really unusual amounts of pups, like you see in this picture. So it's something that we call, this phenomenon is what we call coyote math, and it's expressed sometimes like this: 1 coyote minus 1 coyote equals 1 coyote. You can never kill your way out of a problem with coyotes. It just does not seem to work. Or there's an old ranching saying that if you kill 1 coyote, 2 will show up for its funeral. So their family lives. This is a really fascinating part of coyotes. Their packs, as I said, are just made up of family members. And within that family, only the mom and dad, the alpha male and female breed. They're territorial, we talked about that. But another cool thing is that they mate for life. They're one of only 5% of mammals that do that, and they're monogamous, which is pretty astounding. I mean, most humans can't even hit that level. And all the family members help raise the pups. The fathers, the siblings all help raise the young pups. And they have super strong family bonds, very, very tight families. So their life cycle, this is important to know to understand if you're experiencing conflicts, why it might be happening based on what time of year it is. So in the winter is their breeding season. You might hear more vocalizations. They might be a little more territorial. Spring is when they give birth. That's the only time they use dens. Once the pups are weaned, they'll all be living outside of the dens. And obviously, when they have small pups, that can be a real big time for conflicts. Fall is, we call it the dispersal season, although this can happen any time of year. It's the time most traditionally when the older pups will leave their families and go off and create their own packs. And that can also be a time when you get a lot of conflicts, because it's like kids that are just graduated from college and now they're on their own for the first time. They're going to make mistakes and they're going to cause some problems probably. And we talked about the litter size, the average being 6 pups, but half won't survive the first year. There's heavy mortality in the pups. So this is a short video that just shows the mom and pups.
The same methods that destroyed wolf populations haven't even dented coyote numbers. But why? When large numbers of coyotes are killed, there's more food for those that are left, so females produce more milk and healthier pups with a better chance of survival. Initially blind and helpless, the pups will open their eyes in 10 days. The mother nurses them inside the den for 4 weeks, fed by the male and younger pack members. Eventually, they emerge into the outside world, wide-eyed, but with their ears still furled. Even at this highly tender age, They demonstrate the typical coyote enthusiasm for singing.
I've seen that video a million times and it still warms my heart every time I see it. They're just precious. So what do coyotes eat? Well, they're omnivores like bears or raccoons. So they eat just about anything is the short answer, but rodents are far and away their favorite food. In fact, a single coyote can eat 1,800 rodents in a year. So a nice stable pack can provide us with an amazing source of free rodent control if we learn to get along with them. And they're scavengers, so they keep our environment cleaner. But pets, they have a ongoing study outside of Chicago where they've collared hundreds of coyotes. It's been going on for over 20 years, and their diet studies show that less than 3% of their diet is made up of domestic pets. There's another one that was done in Los Angeles that shows a higher percentage. I think it's closer to 10%, which makes sense because it's so densely populated. But pets are still rarely consumed. Rodents are favorite source of prey. This picture on the bottom left was taken by a photographer who watched this coyote pack, a mom that had some pups and a dad, and he watched them bring home, like every day it was bowls and gophers, and then one day he just saw them the mother bringing home a half a pizza. So although they really like to stick to their natural sources of food, they are opportunistic. So vocalizations is another area of coyotes where there's a lot of misunderstanding around. So oftentimes people tell me, I hear the coyotes at night and I know they're overpopulated because I hear dozens of them. Or they'll say, I hear them at night and every night they're killing something. I hear them killing something. It sounds like they're skinning a cat or something. But actually coyotes can play tricks with their voices. It's called the Bogest effect, where just a couple of coyotes can sound like a large pack. In fact, at the Wildlife Rescue, we have 2 non-releasable coyotes, and we'll get them howling before we give tours and ask people how many coyotes they think there are. And they'll say, 8, 10, and no, it's just 2 of them. So, and they often vocalize like that when they're greeting each other, because even though they're pack animals, they spend a significant amount of their day alone because they're, like I said, rodents are their favorite prey. So they don't need their pack members. They're just hunting small animals. So, but at night they'll meet up and it's just such a joyous time. It does sound like a cat's being skinned. I admit that, but when you see the behaviors behind actual vocalizations, it's actually very joyous and happy because they're just so glad to see each other. And they make all these shrill noises, but it's pretty adorable. And they vocalize as a territorial marker to let other coyotes know that they're in the area and to signal distress. They have a bark that's signals distress. They have tons of vocalizations, but they don't vocalize when they're hunting. That wouldn't even make sense. It would just be sending an alert to your prey that you're hunting or to other predators in the area that they could get their food stolen. So here's a good represent. This isn't a very good quality video, but it's a great video to show you what's the behavior behind the vocalizations we just spoke about. Okay, that sounded pretty chaotic. Hopefully it wasn't too dark for you guys to see. But it sounds like some bad things are going on, but when you see their actual behaviors, they're just so happy to see each other. It's a very joyous time. So that's actually the behaviors that'll be behind those horrific sounds when you hear in the middle of the night. So this is another thing, slide I created called How to Speak Coyote, so that we understand their behaviors. Sometimes we have even difficulty determining why our dogs do certain behaviors. So it's important that we understand coyotes so that we know when they are a threat, because which is a very rare occurrence. But they are, of course, all individuals, like all animals are, but they have pretty consistent behaviors among the species. One being that they're very fear-based, very high-strung, very nervous. They're chickens, essentially. They're big, big chickens. So the behavior you see, the body language you see here on the coyote on the top left is one that came into the wildlife rescue. And that's generally how they present when we see them, is they just curl into a little ball and they just want to be invisible around people. They're scared of humans. One thing I can't stress enough is they get used to people in urban areas because they have to be to survive, but they are very, very scared of humans. The picture on the top right is how a coyote will act if he's protecting a den. He or she is protecting a den site or small pups, or has no escape route. And it's usually this body language, is almost every time I've ever seen it, is associated with an off-leash dog. Off-leash dogs chase coyotes all the time and they hate it. The picture on the bottom right is of a wildlife rescuer named Rebecca Dimitrick, and she's great. She goes out in the field, rescues tons of animals. And I put this picture in there. I think she rescued that coyote that was stuck in a fence. And I put this in here to demonstrate how easy they are to handle. This is not a tranquilized coyote. Of course, we do wear gloves, but once we have gloves on, they rarely bite. I've never had a coyote try to bite me. I've handled tons of them. I mean, when you go in to grab them out of a kennel or something, they'll snap, but once you get them on a table or something, you put a towel over their head, you're wearing gloves, they're easier to work on than most domestic dogs. They just lie there. They just freeze. They're so scared. The behavior you see on the bottom left, which that coyote is intently watching somebody, and that often intimidates people and they feel that that's a predatory stance, but that kind of behavior is often associated with the escorting. It's just a coyote very curious about what's traveling through their territories, especially dogs. And they just want to make sure that whatever it is leaving. So oftentimes they'll follow from afar with someone that's walking their dog, and the person walking the dog, it feels very predatory, but it's what we call an escort behavior, just to make sure that that threat is going to leave their territories. Another common myth is that coyotes, a pack of coyotes will send like a female coyote in heat to lure a dog back to her, so the awaiting pack will then jump on that dog and kill it as a meal. There's actually no evidence that this is a coordinated strategy amongst coyotes. I've never seen it, but what I have seen happen over and over and over again is that off-leash dogs chase coyotes who then run back to their awaiting pack members. Because like I said, during the day, they might sleep in separate spots, but they'll run back to the general area where they know their pack mates are, who might come out and try to help them. So, but no, it's not a coordinated hunting strategy. This is a short video showing how coyotes will message dogs, much like a border collie pushes livestock. That's the way coyotes will work dogs when they are protecting a nearby den site or something. It's often they just want to annoy the dog by biting at its ankles until it leaves. And you'll also hear this coyote make a distress vocalization. So while where incidents like this are commonly reported as attacks, as you can see, that's not a predatory event. That's a defensive posture by the coyote who's protecting pups and just wants that dog off out of the area. So when it comes to conflicts with coyotes, it is always, I can say this, it's one of the few things that's almost always true. It always can be traced back to somebody who either intentionally or unintentionally fed this coyote. That every single instance I've ever seen can be traced back to that. So feeding wildlife is a huge problem. And it seems strange, but there are people who intentionally feed wildlife. Just so you know, these animals, coyotes, all these animals don't need our help to survive. They do very, very well on their own. And in fact, by supplying them food, they come into more contact with people, more contact. They're more exposed to more diseases, they're more exposed to predators. It's always they cross more roads to get places. It shortens their lifespan considerably, not to mention that we don't even supply them with the correct food diets for what they need. So it's a huge problem. It seems strange that people intentionally feed them, but there you go. And that will eventually lead to someone getting bit. Now, most of coyotes and wildlife can be fed by humans, and their behavior will never escalate. But you never know which one. All you got to do is take a little more of aggressive coyote or raccoon or whatever, and that one will start to bite when somebody does, one person feeds it, another person feeds it, and then a person will walk by that's not feeding it, and it might escalate its behavior to a bite. There's also unintentional feeding of coyotes by things like feral cat colonies, which is why we really want to encourage feral cat and anybody that's managing a feral cat colony to use things like these elevated feeding platforms. They're pretty easy to make. They lengthen the cat's lifespans. They're better for wildlife. It's a win-win all the way around. The food doesn't get full of insects. And we put that aluminum siding, that aluminum stripping on the bottom to prevent raccoons from accessing it. But it keeps cats safer from predators, and it keeps their food in better condition. And we also stress to people to only leave out as much food, put it out during the day, and only leave out as much as they can eat during the day, so that there's not a bunch of food drawing in other animals. So also you need to think about things like your bird feeders. Those are a huge rodent attractant wherever you attract rodents. When you attract rodents on your property, you attract coyotes. Pet food left out at night. Pet food should just never be left out at night. Trash and compost needs to be secured. And fallen fruit from trees is a huge attractant for rodents and for coyotes directly from the fruit itself and for the rodents it attracts. Ponds and coops. Ponds need to be secured so nothing can get to the fish. You can use grates, or you can put hiding spots. They sell things where tunnels that fish can swim in so they're protected from predators and gives them a place to hide. With chicken coops, you have to have a predator-proof chicken coop because they will get eaten. Everything eats chickens. Absolutely everything eats chickens. Even if you tell me I haven't lost a chicken yet, you will if you just wait long enough. So better to be proactive and make sure that they're secured. And as an aside, so everybody knows, chicken coops are one of the biggest rodent attractant things I've ever seen. So keep that in mind before you get chicken coops. Okay, now this is very important. There was a study done in Rhode Island, and this illustrates this point better than I can with all this information. There was a couple of coyotes that were coming into conflict. They caught them, they tagged them to monitor their behaviors. And these, on that graph on top, on the right, shows the activity of the coyotes. The blue lines are from nighttime activity and the red are from daytime. Two main points where you can see those coyotes are congregating. Two main points. They tracked those down and saw that there's active feeders at both those locations. They cited them and explained to them why they needed to stop. And 2 weeks later, if you look at the graph below, that's one sighting in the general area, and that was it. One ping off a collar. It completely ended the coyotes entering that area. The picture on the bottom right is of a coyote in the I'm just blanking out on the big beach area in, it starts with an S, in Marin County. I don't know why I can't think of it. I'm losing my mind. Anyway, that coyote was chasing, I don't know if this is from me or not. Can you guys, is my video working okay? I'm getting you.
You
Can you hear me there?
Hi, hey Kelly. Yeah, no, your presentation looks great, but your personal screen got turned off, so I think we're trying to get it back on.
Oh, okay.
And an audience member tells you it's Stinson Beach.
Stinson Beach. Thank you. God, the audience is really saving my butt today. Stinson Beach. That's it. So this coyote was acting really strange. It was biting tires of cars when they drove by. This is a few years ago. And the media picked up the story and everybody was speculating what was causing this coyote to bite the tires. And they were saying, oh, maybe it eaten magic mushrooms, maybe it had a parasite in its brain, you know, all these. But in reality, we knew that what was causing it was that cars were driving by, the coyote was hanging out at the road one day, cars started driving by and throwing food. Eventually, the coyote started associating the cars with food. And then when a car would drive by and not feed it, he would start biting the tires. Sadly, of course, that coyote was eventually hit and killed. It's hard. That's a tough area to educate people because you get so many tourists. Let me see if this will advance. Yes. Okay. Is this box? You guys can't see this, can you? Where it says the co-host has asked you to start your video. You guys can't see that, right?
No, we can't see that. We can just
Perfect.
see your slide. But I think you might have asked, it's possible you maybe undid your camera, because we can't see you anymore.
Oh, because this is for the video part to tape it. Is that what you're talking about?
So for your to see you,
I got
Kelly,
it.
I think you have to turn it back on at the bottom of your screen.
You know, I can, except I can't find my mouse now. Why is this? I don't know what's going on. My mouse is unviewable. I see it does say that my video is not started. Well, no one needs to see my face, right?
Well, actually, it was nice to see your face.
We want to see you.
Yeah, it was
Nobody
nice to
needs
see
to
your
be
face.
subjected to that. Let me see. Yeah, for some reason my mouse disappeared. I don't know what's going on.
All right.
It's haunted. So, okay, so common question, that's something that people want to know, is are coyotes dangerous? The answer is no, they're not dangerous at all. I mean, everything's relative, right? But coyotes are one of the least dangerous things you'll ever come across. So coyote bites in all of North America are around, you know, roughly about 20, this is even more than actually happens, but let's just be generous and say 20 a year. So most of those, almost all of those are always very superficial. We're saying no overnight hospital stays or anything like that. Dog bites, on the other hand, dog bites 4.5 million people a year. And 1,000 people a day go to emergency rooms for dog bites. And a lot of those are small children. I don't say that because I want people to be scared of dogs, but just to offer some perspective, because we think of dogs as our family members and our kids. When they're far more dangerous, what we think of coyotes, oh, wild animals, they're so unpredictable. In fact, wild animals are very predictable, especially when compared to domestic animals. Domestic animals are actually the ones that are very unpredictable. Wildlife generally acts in very predictable ways because their survival depends on it. Their survival depends on knowing how they're going to react in every situation. I was a vet tech for many years, and when vets are asked about the most common reasons that patients are admitted, the number one reason patients are admitted is ingestion of foreign bodies. The number two, which the next three happen so often that we gave them abbreviations. The second one is HBC, which means hit by cars, and 6 million pets a year are hit by cars. The number three most common reason that our pets are admitted into veterinary hospitals is for dog fight wounds. That means our other domestic pets are attacking them. The number four most common reason is cat fight wounds. So the biggest threat to our pets are cars, with foreign bodies, cars, and our other domestic pets. While we always worry about the effect that wildlife have on our pets, the truth is, when I work in the wildlife hospital, we get multiple cases a week of wild animals attacked and injured and killed by domestic pets. So we're looking at it from our perspective, but looking at it from a wider lens, when you zoom out at that, looking at that problem, you see that wildlife have it much worse than our pets do. Wildlife are by far the most innocent ones out of the equation. And in fact, things like that pencil is more dangerous to that little girl than wildlife. Okay, so coyotes and diseases. This is another area where there's a lot of misconceptions. Overall, coyotes are a very healthy species. They're not, people always say, I saw a coyote during the day. Does that mean it's rabid? No, it's totally normal for them to be out during the day. Sometimes they have to work overtime to feed their families. And the coyotes are not even a rabies vector species in California. So in fact, I think in all of North America, I think there's only 2 spots where coyotes where they found coyotes with rabies. Some with South Texas maybe, and maybe somewhere in North Carolina. I can't remember, but first of all, rabies is a very rare disease. And the signs of rabies are mimicked by many other diseases, and the only way to truly diagnose it is to examine brain tissue. But things like distemper the symptoms are identical to rabies. So, when you see an animal and you're like, oh, it's out during the day, it's probably rabies. Rabies are the last thing you should think. That doesn't mean you should run around handling wildlife without gloves on or anything, but just to ease your mind that it's very, very uncommon. Coyotes are not even a carrier in California. So mange is another big one, not because people are scared of the coyotes, but because very kindly, people are worried and want some way to know how they can help them. Mange is considered a natural disease in coyotes, but frankly, there's probably our use of rodenticides is making it worse. It's been scientifically proven that the use of rodenticides is causing mange in bobcats. That link has not been scientifically proven in coyotes yet, but it's very suspicious. So don't use rodenticides. Not only is it bad for wildlife and is killing lots of our natural rodent control, the species that control our rodent populations naturally, but it doesn't even lower your populations of rodents. So again, in the long term, it can even make your problems worse. So mange is easily treatable, but it gets complicated because coyotes are really, really hard to catch. You don't want to separate them from their families. They have those tight family bonds. They do horribly in captivity. So until coyotes are so compromised that their mobility is that they can't really move very well, nobody will attempt to go out to catch it. It's a futile job. You'll go out 100 times and they're really fast and agile. So if you see a coyote with mange, it's great to be concerned. We appreciate that, but unless its mobility is severely challenged, we can't get it into for treatment. So just bear that in mind. When you see it, don't worry, it takes a lot of close contact for it to spread to another animal, so you don't have to worry about your dog getting it or whatever. And a lot of times they'll recover from it on their own. So, and it's hard to tell if a coyote actually has mange or it's just natural shedding. So there's just a lot of, even though it's easily treatable, a lot of reasons why we don't often treat it. So management options when it comes to conflicts. There's no quick fix. It doesn't mean there aren't solutions. It just means it takes a little bit of effort on our part. And that's hard to get people motivated to do that. But in the long run, it makes everybody's lives much easier. So the things to keep in mind is that relocation of wildlife is illegal. People often say, I don't want this coyote in my neighborhood. Can't we take it somewhere out in the wild and some coyote utopia and let it run free? But relocated wildlife it's illegal in California. It spreads diseases to new areas. It separates dependent family members. Most relocated wildlife die within the first 3 months because in territorial disputes, trying to get back to their former territories, being hit by cars. It's not a humane option at all. So, and leaving things out, lethal controls have problems. Snares and things like that are dangerous to our pets. That picture below is of a dog that got caught in a coyote snare. And of course, ideally, we'd be able to target just a problem coyote if we needed to take a coyote out and do lethal control, but it's really hard. We're not to the point yet where DNA is really an effective method to isolate a single coyote. Once you take a coyote into captivity, if it's not injured or orphaned, it has to be euthanized. So while you're collecting DNA, you're still having to euthanize these coyotes as they come in. So it doesn't really help in that regard. As you know, looking at coyotes visually, they can all look a lot alike. So you can't often tell, I've seen that coyote before, and that's the one that attacked this dog. It's often very difficult to tell them apart. And if you do remove coyotes, just a random coyote, then you have that pack splintering like we spoke of, which it can cause all sorts of problems. And you've taken a stable pack and now it's destabilized. So modifying human behavior is always the best option. And I always include these photos because most of you are probably too young to remember this, but back in the day, we used to feed bears in national parks. And then we saw all the problems that came from this. Bears attacking people, breaking into cars, running into campsites. And so a huge campaign was started by the Park Service to eliminate the feeding of wildlife in national parks. And now people understand when you go to a campsite or you're in those areas, you have a responsibility and everybody adheres to it pretty well. You can't just have a campsite with your food on the ground or food in your car, or you can expect problems. And I'm hoping that people can start thinking about our coyotes in the same way that we think about the bears, because this is obviously this educational campaign saved bears, and it allowed them to stay on the landscape and coexist better with people. Now, if you do have a coyote that is getting a little too bold, it's approaching you, your pet, your home, or your yard, we always suggest hazing. And that's just simply acting big, bad, and loud and scaring a coyote. Now, people often tell me, well, I tried to haze it and it didn't, the coyote wasn't scared at all. Bear in mind, in urban areas, coyotes are way more desensitized to sounds and humans. It's very easy to haze a coyote where I live in the rural areas. They'll just see me and they run. But in cities, they're really used to a lot of lights and sounds and people. So you have to be louder. Usually it doesn't take more than a hey, 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 waving of your arms and running towards it a little bit, and they'll leave. It's great to make eye contact with the coyote so he knows that you're targeting him specifically. There's also tons of things you can have. Can be worn on a lanyard, and it's just a noisemaker that people, like if you go to watch your kids compete in a sports game, you could wear it around your neck and it's just a very loud, something like that. You can toss things at it in its direction. And what will usually happen is the coyote will trot away, a few feet away. It'll stop, it'll turn around and look back at you again. Don't quit hazing. That's when you keep hazing and haze a little harder until it leaves. Of course, you don't want to haze if a coyote's injured, if it doesn't have an escape route, or if you think there may be pups nearby. Okay, so how to avoid conflicts on walks. Leashes. Number one, if your dog is on a leash, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to have a problem with the coyote. That's number one. Number two, we encourage people to think of your pets as toddlers. That means if you have a small child, you don't just throw it out in your yard and don't watch it. You still have to watch it. So if you have small pets, think of them as like toddlers. You wouldn't let them just run free wherever you are. There's too many dangers. Practice avoidance. If you really are kind of nervous around coyotes and you don't want to see them at all, one of the best things you can do is just not walk your pets during the times when they're most active, which is between dusk and dawn. That'll eliminate your chances of seeing them even more. I like to recommend light up collars and bells for collars. Coyotes are very neophobic, meaning they're scared of new things, and they're not used to seeing dogs that are lighting up and jingling, so they're unlikely to attack. But also, more importantly, it can protect you from the far more likely danger of getting hit by a car. You know, it makes you more visible at night. Carry a deterrent, something like this. You could carry a walking stick. You could carry a little thing of that halt, you know, the dog spray. That's a little more difficult to use because if it's a windy day, that can get you in trouble if it blows back on you. Anything like that. Also, a deterrent is great. If you're an elderly person and you fall while you're walking, it's great to have a way that you can bring attention to yourself. Or also can help protect you from the real predators, which is other humans. And if necessary, haze. So protecting yards, nowadays, luckily, we have some great products that we can put up in our yards to almost make them completely safe. If you have a fence that's like 5 feet or higher, you can attach things called coyote rollers on the top, which is basically just a roll bar. Because when animals jump fences, they don't jump clean over. They jump to the top and they touch the top of the fence, and these bars will roll them back. They also help keep animals in yards. So if you have pets that like to jump fences to get out, it'll keep your pets in your yard. So, and there's another product called Dig Defense. Back in the day, if we had dogs or wildlife that was digging in or out of our yard, we had to trench all around the bottom of our fence. Very hardware cloth. It was a very laborious job, but now Dig Defense sells these galvanized steel rods that are welded together, and you just hammer them right in the ground. Catios are just predator-proof enclosures for cats. We really recommend those instead of just letting your cats roam free outside. And again, light up collars and bells if you're absolutely determined to let your cat run at night outside, but it's a very bad idea. So this is just a short video showing how those roll bars work. This is a different brand than Coyote rollers, but it gives you an idea of how they work. So did I mention you guys? I can't, it just occurred to me. Did I say if you have questions, drop them in the chat and we'll cover them at the end of this, which we're almost wrapping up here. So just in case I forgot to mention that. So this is another wildlife deterrent here, or it's something, another guard animal, let's say, idea. Someone sent me this off of a trail camera. There's no audio to this. So if you can get yourself a guard skunk, it might be very effective. Okay, so the point is of all this, if we could magically make all the coyotes go away, would you then be able to let your pets and kids outside unsupervised? No, of course not. There's so many other dangers, even if coyotes didn't exist. You have people that intentionally harm pets. Your kids can get in all sorts of trouble, and humans, unfortunately, there's human predators. Things like great horned owls are predators of small dogs and cats. And of course, our pets can be problematic too. So the takeaways. Leashes. Number one way to prevent conflicts is just simply to put your pets on leashes. Supervise small pets and kids. Secure your yards. Don't feed wildlife. Haze if necessary. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all, please don't hesitate to contact me at Project Coyote. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. And I think, does that wrap? Oh, no. Okay, I always forgot. So I always put a short video or two at the end, just showing interesting coyote behaviors. So enjoy. That one just demonstrates that coyotes aren't always as badass as the reputation would lead you to believe. And finally, this one. A coyote and his badger friend going through a culvert. Very, very adorable. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to turn things over to Virginia Donahue, the Executive Director of San Francisco Animal Care and Control.
Thanks, Kelly. So is Kelly advancing my slides, Deb? Is that how that works? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll do that.
All right. So I'm the Executive Director of San Francisco Animal Care and Control. And here are some lovely photos of coyotes across different parts of San Francisco. The one on the right, the far right, that guy is up at Yerba Buena, right behind the ice rink there. Next slide. Okay, so we are an open admission shelter. We work with all species of animals. We're responsible for domestic and wildlife. Our animal control officers are on duty 7 days a week from 6 a.m. To midnight to respond to wildlife and public safety and other emergencies. We have a coyote sighting system where you can go on our website and report any of your observations about coyotes, any incidents, any sightings. And every month we meet with Rec and Park and the Presidio Trust, and we all look at all these reports, and it helps us tell what's happening in different parts of the city. Next slide. In addition to coyotes, we also work with all different sorts of wildlife. You know, birds, possums, plenty of raccoons, skunks. That's what these officers do every day. Next slide. The biggest problem in the city is the feeding of wildlife and, of course, feeding coyotes. It's illegal. It encourages coyotes to lose their natural fear of humans, to look at them as a source of food. It is our #1 source of conflict. It happens all over the city. Next slide. And so we would really appreciate it if you reported illegal feeding of coyotes and other wildlife. You can do it on our sighting form. You can send us an email. You can call an emergency line. Because most feeders that we are able to catch, it's a routine. They do it all the time. So if you can tell us, oh, they're out their front door at Monday at 5 a.m. every day to feed the wildlife, that's good for us to know. So what else can you do to help coyotes and other wildlife? Keep your dogs on leash, keep your cats indoors, make sure your neighborhood is not welcoming coyotes. That means feeding pets inside, picking up falling fruit, clean up around bird feeders, keep garbage can lids secure. If you've got overgrown brush in your yard, clean it out, especially we've found coyote dens under people's porches. So clean all that out. We have a yard assessment that's available on our website that you can just print out and look at your own yard and see if you might be unintentionally attracting coyotes. Next slide, please. And so this is our contact information, where you can report sightings, where we're physically located should you need to come to the shelter for a reason, and how you can reach us, 415-554-9400. And I think now I turn it over to Deb, who's gonna parcel out the questions. Is that right?
Yes, I have questions. Kelly, can you turn on the video at the bottom of your screen? So we can.
I'm trying, but for some, oh, wait. I think it's almost, let me see. No,
Almost.
it's not letting me use my mouse. I don't know why. Wait, let me see something.
We would do it, but we can't do it
okay,
for
go.
you. Oh,
There,
oh,
is
there
that?
it is. Yay.
Oh, good. I can't see me,
We can
but okay, good. But it's working.
Okay, so I've got a lot of questions from the chat, and I'm going to start with you, Kelly. Can you speak to why coyotes may be taking small dogs? The questioner says it seems like a new behavior and not territorial. Why small
Sometimes-
dogs?
Well, coyotes are big chickens, so they often don't like to tangle with larger dogs. So it is possible that, even though it's rare, it is possible that they are opportunists. So if they see a small dog, they could target it as a prey item. They don't know that there are pets. They just see a small animal and think, oh, but generally they like to take their familiar prey, but that doesn't mean that there aren't coyotes out there that won't take a small dog if the opportunity arises. And there may just, if it feels like it's happening more, I don't think we can have any evidence to support that necessarily. I'm not sure, but it may just be that there's more people out walking their dogs. It may just be certain times of the year that the conflicts may arise, like maybe when more juvenile coyotes are dispersing and they're going to look for easy prey sources. Could be something like that.
Yeah, so Kelly, there's certain times of the year that are more problematic, but I don't think, looking at all our reports, I don't think there's an actual increase that we could document. But
Yeah.
anytime someone's dog dies, that's of course terrible and a tragedy. And we want to help people do everything they can so that doesn't happen to them and their pet.
And to give you an idea of how, when you hear them in the news, sometimes it makes national news. That's just evidence of how rare an occurrence it is. That's just why dog bites rarely make the news. Like I said, 4.2 million of them a year, but you hardly ever hear it unless someone's killed about dog bites in the news, because it's not a story. You know how they say man bites dog is a story, dog bites man is not a story. It's the same with coyotes. Just killing a cat can make national news. So that's because it just doesn't happen that often.
Next question I'm sending to you, Lieutenant Pone. You ready?
Yep.
I've heard of 3 people in San Francisco this year losing their small dogs to a coyote, and their dogs were on leash. I also lost my small dog to a coyote in May of this year. We know about these recent cases, but can you elaborate more details?
So first I just want to say, for whoever asked that question, I'm so sorry that you lost your dog. I have a tiny dog myself, and it's hard, can feel hard to keep them safe because they're so little. So I'm so sorry about that. So as far as coyotes attacking dogs on leash, it's very, very rare. And one of the biggest things, as Director Donahue spoke about with reporting coyote sightings, we don't know that these things are happening unless they're being reported to us. I'm not aware of 3 on-leash dogs being killed. I am aware of an on-leash attack where the dog was injured, but I'm not aware of on-leash attacks where dogs are being killed. So if you are aware of those incidents happening, I would ask you to encourage the dog owners to reach out to us so that we can document these things. We can't do anything if we're not being informed, and it's really important for us to find out where these things are happening so that we can understand coyote behavior in the city better, and so that we can understand where we need to spend extra time to make sure that the public is safe.
Next question, also for you, Lieutenant Pone. Is it illegal to feed coyotes?
Yes, it is illegal. We're very eager to know about it. So if you know of anywhere that it's happening regularly, anybody you know that's doing it, we really, really beg you to contact us. It is imperative in order to protect the public, pets, and coyotes that we put an end to feeding when we can. So it is very illegal, and we really would love for you to tell us when you know that it's going on.
Next question for you, Kelly. How high can coyotes jump?
They can jump pretty high. They're really, really athletic. So what we like to say is to secure a backyard. Technically, they say 6 foot with coyote rollers on top. Although I think you're pretty safe with a 5-foot fence with coyote rollers on top. But ideally, it would be 6 foot. But they can clear a 6. I mean, when I say clear, they can't. They're generally not jumping straight over like a 6-foot fence. But if they can, part of the fence, they can scramble. If there's places they can get toe holes, chain link, anything that they can climb up, they can scale pretty high fences. I've seen them climb trees to get fruit out of trees. They can climb trees pretty high.
Next question for Kelly. Do coyotes have rabies?
Coyotes, any mammal can get rabies, but they are not a rabies vector species in California, meaning they're not a known carrier of rabies. Rabies itself is a very rare disease. We've pretty much got a really good handle on it in the United States with our vaccinations. And it's very rare for a wild animal to have rabies, but in California, coyotes are not a rabies vector species.
So in San Francisco, there are rabid bats every year, and we really want people to keep your pets up on their rabies vaccines, because rare but fatal, right? So it's a big, for us as an agency, it's a big public health thing. But yeah, this would not be anywhere near the top of my worry list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep vaccinated and don't handle any wildlife without gloves. And if for some reason you do get bit by something, if you wash the wound immediately, the very low chance that you'll ever get rabies, that will lower it even further. It's a very fragile virus, dies outside of the host really quickly. Of course, if you're bit by something, you want to go to a doctor, but washing the wound immediately will is a very good strategy.
Okay. Next question, Kelly. In McLaren Park, I have heard of at least 3 incidences of 3 coyotes surrounding a dog and a dog owner. What do you do if that happens?
If you have a small dog, I always encourage people to, of course, if you'll have it on a leash. You want to bring it to you, pick it up and hold it, and then haze the coyotes. If you're feeling very uncomfortable, you can just back out of the area. Coyotes are full of bluff. They're not an aggressive species. Of all the animals we get at the wildlife rescue, they're the ones at the least that I worry about when I go in and handle them. Squirrels will get my attention. Tree squirrels are really rough to handle. Coyotes, I don't even think twice. I've never had an aggressive one, and all the ones I've worked at the wildlife rescue. They're full of bluff though. So they're probably just worried about the dogs getting it out of their territory. In a rare circumstance, they may be looking at it as a small dog as a prey source, but just pick it up, yell at the coyotes, and back out of the area.
For Director Donahue, any estimate of how many coyotes are in San Francisco?
We don't know exactly how many, but we're pretty sure it's well under 100.
Back to Kelly. Do they hunt in packs?
Not in California, really. When you answer questions like this, of course, there's always anomalies and it can happen. But by far, the prey they're hunting in California is very, very small. They don't really have to hunt as a coordinated effort. And as I said, they spend most of their day apart. So generally they hunt alone just for small prey and also to eat vegetation. They'll eat vegetation, berries, grasshoppers, insects, and occasionally a free roaming cat or very rarely a small dog. But by and large, it's just rodents that they're after and they don't have to hunt as a pack to do that.
Another one for you, Kelly. Are they mostly nocturnal or does it matter for them?
They're not naturally nocturnal, actually. It's kind of interesting. They're Chris-buck. I can never pronounce this. Chris, can you guys pronounce it? They're active during dusk and dawn, most active during dusk and dawn, but the majority of wildlife, Chris-buck. Damn it. Yes. I have trouble pronouncing things like that, but meaning they're most active at dusk and dawn, but they become nocturnal to avoid humans. So that's why they're nocturnal, but it's not actually a natural behavior for them. They just want to avoid us at all costs. We are very scary to coyotes.
Another one for you. How can one recognize the location of a den?
The coyotes are really, really good at hiding their dens, whereas fox dens are kind of sometimes in plain sight. Coyote dens are very rarely easy to spot. They're really smart and they're really good at hiding them. And they normally have dens that they'll use for years and years, and they'll have several of them in an area so that if one gets fleas or something like that or discovered, they can move all their pups to another area. They don't normally den under people's homes and things like that. That's more of a fox behavior, but it can happen. But usually they'll be in areas you might walk past them because they can hide them so well. But generally, if they have the ability to, they'll put them in more remote spots, often on a hillside where they can overlook things. And they'll often have more than one entrance. They'll have an entrance and an exit. But they can be under fallen logs. They could use a badger den and dig it out more and use it themselves. They're very versatile in that behavior too.
Question just came in, direct to you, Lieutenant Pone. Do you know where the dens are in San Francisco?
Yes and no. I'm sure there are many that we don't know about. I shouldn't say many. I'm sure there are some that we don't know about. And for the ones that we are aware of, we typically don't know the exact location. We can't walk right up to the entrance. But based on the behavior of the coyotes, we can typically tell if there is a den in the area during pupping season. But we do encourage people to let us know if they're seeing behavior that might be indicative of a den, or as Director Donnie, who was talking about with the backyard assessment that we have on our website, there have been homes where there are dens on their property. So it's always really important for people to be reporting to us what they're seeing so that we can try to locate them. We wouldn't necessarily, as Kelly said, it is illegal to relocate coyotes, so we wouldn't necessarily destroy or remove a den, but it's always better for public safety for us to know where the dens are so that we can warn people of the behavior associated with a den.
Another one for Kelly. Can coyotes make low sounds? Everyone heard the high sounds.
Yeah, I have to think about that for a second. Yeah, some of their sounds are kind of low. They'll bark like a dog. They don't really growl like a dog, but they'll have yips, howls, whines. I think they have 22 different vocalizations that are probably all named, and I can't think of them all. Cries, but I can't think of any that are particularly low. They're generally kind of high pitched. But I'm not an audio specialist, whatever they name of them. What do you call people that know a lot about vocalizations? That's not my specialty, but I can't think of, I'm trying to rack my brain to think if I've ever heard of a real low pitch from a coyote, and I can't recall it right now.
Another one for you, Kelly. How long do the pups stay in the den? And why don't you ever see the pups?
Because they hide those dens really well. And the coyotes, the pups don't come out of the den till just about the time that they're done nursing. So, you know, when they're a couple of weeks old, 2-3 weeks old, they'll come out of the den. And the parents hide them really well. And the pups are trained really well. They might still be above ground, but the parents will hide them in areas while they forage. Sometimes they'll take the pups with them if they feel very, very safe. But the pups generally don't start traveling with the parents a lot until they're maybe about 4 months old or so. But when they're tiny pups, they're either in the dens, or when they first come up, the parents will hide them above ground while they go off to hunt and things like that. So it is rare to see pups.
Question about water. Where are coyotes getting water during the drought? For example, in Bernal Heights. But just in general, in a city where it's really dry, where would they get water?
I don't know. I don't know the city that well. Like, I know where Bernal Heights is, but I don't know the top topography enough to, you know, pinpoint. But coyotes can get water. They're pretty good at finding water, even in things like, you think anytime you have streets, water, you know, when they wash the streets. I don't even know, do they do that anymore? Seems like they used to wash the streets a lot. Coyotes can get water in pools. They can get water just eating dewy grass sometimes, and their prey is enough to keep them hydrated. They can live in desert areas with very low water intake once they adapt to it. So they're pretty good at finding natural water sources and unnatural ones. Dog bowls, that's probably a big source in urban areas. Out in rural areas, there's livestock tanks and ponds, along with natural creeks and things like that.
Question for Lieutenant Pone. When people report an attack, what does that mean? And how often is actual physical contact reported? Doesn't specify dog or person, but either.
That's a really good question. Something that happens frequently with coyotes, but also with dogs, is that people will report an attack and use that word. And it takes a little bit of investigating on our part to figure out exactly what that means. So it can mean a number of things, but with coyotes, a physical contact is almost unheard of with people. So, you know, we do caution people to be safe, especially with little ones, if they know there's coyotes in the area. But if a coyote were to make contact with a human being, that would be a big deal. We would take that very seriously, and you would probably see media coverage about it. It's almost unheard of. And quite frequently, when we do get a report of physical contact, it ends up not being completely accurate, or it ends up being more of like curiosity with sniffing and no skin actually broken. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but I can't think of a single report we've had of a coyote that has broken skin on a human. And then with dogs, we often get people reporting attacks where it typically ends up being more of escorting behavior that's misunderstood by the humans, or that they just don't know how to react to it. Because if you don't know what it is, it could be very scary. And that's part of why we do these informational outreach things, is because we want people to know how to stay safe. So oftentimes escorting behavior will be reported as an attack. Whenever anyone reports anything unusual to us through our website or by calling the emergency line, if it's something that's unusual and involves physical contact, usually one of the officers, typically me, will go out to the resident's home and take a full report of what happened to make sure that it's not anything truly alarming.
Can I just say, I forgot to mention something. If, when we were discussing what to do if you're surrounded by coyotes, and this applies to most wildlife, you're not going to outrun any wild animal or dog. This applies to dogs too. You're not going to outrun them. So if you're in a situation where there's an aggressive, you think an animal that might be aggressive, running is actually the worst thing you can do, because even if the animal wasn't aggressive, just the fact that you ran can make them chase you. You know, it just makes their instinct to run and chase you. So you never want to run from a coyote, from a mountain lion, just don't run, because they're very, very fast, all of them. And then even if you're an Olympic runner, you will not outrun them. So it's better to face them and scare them away.
This was another one for you, Kelly. They seem to be multiplying by my house. It sounds like there is no good option to deal with overpopulation. Is there a tipping point, and what do you do?
This is an important thing to understand, is coyotes and all predators, they don't overpopulate. And that's because they are all like mountain lions, wolves, coyotes, bobcats, they're all very territorial animals. So they'll only tolerate, you know, like a mountain lion won't tolerate another mountain lion in its territory. If another mountain lion comes in, it'll kill it. Same with wolves. Coyotes generally don't kill another coyote, but they'll fight, and coyotes don't like to fight. So that keeps areas only having so many animals. It may feel certain times a year like they're all suddenly overpopulated, especially this time of year, because coyotes sometimes will be with their whole families. Occasionally they are all together. And that this time of year, that could include their pups, which could be pretty big this time of year of this year, and animals, their siblings that have not dispersed yet. So they may have yearling siblings that haven't dispersed. So you may see multiple coyotes together this time of year traveling together. And that can make you think, oh my God, they're suddenly overpopulated, when that is not the case. What is happening is that soon those older animals will disperse and it'll go back to its normal thing, you know, with the normal amount of coyotes, but they won't overpopulate. They can only, they'll defend territories where they can feed themselves, and they won't allow other ones in. So, and there's only so much prey available. It keeps their populations down. So those kind of animals do not overpopulate.
So this is for Spencer, our friend from Rec and Park. Someone asks about the trails in Golden Gate Park. They say with long lines of tourists on trails, coyotes are moving around to be more on trails where people, little kids, and dogs are. Example, Stowe Lake Island. There's more and more coyotes. How do you handle being on the trails with the dog? Like, what would you do as Rec and Park to alleviate conflict?
Well, I mean, if you keep your dog on the leash and follow Kelly's advice about if you ever encounter a coyote, I think it applies equally when you're on a trail versus when you're anywhere else. I mean, we ask everyone in the park system to keep to the trails, actually, and I think you're less likely to meet a coyote on a place that's well traveled. So, you know, that if you, I maybe I'm not totally understanding the question, but if you stay to the trails, I would think that you'd be much less likely to meet a coyote. And if you follow the general advice about leashing your dog, you know, picking it up if it comes near you, and hazing the coyote, I think you're almost certainly not going to have an incident in those if you follow those suggestions.
And then there's some instances where there may be trail closures to keep people away from den sites and things like that.
Yeah, in some instances, we as Director Donahue mentioned, we meet monthly as a committee, and we try to assess the various areas where there's a higher risk of coyote and human conflict, and in some instances we close trails because we deem it to be a situation where there might be, the higher potential for conflict. So we do close trails during certain parts of the season to try to prevent that conflict. And that is, the sort of necessary balance we need to do in our park system to try to prevent possible coyote human conflict while also, making sure that our parks are accessible for all.
Here's another question for Kelly. Are rodent poisons lethal to coyotes who eat mice and rats?
Sure, they can be. If mice and rats eat a lot of rodenticides, coyotes eat a lot of those, and eventually the levels build up in them. And if they get hit by any kind of small injury to them, if those rodents are filled with anticoagulant rodenticides, any kind of small injury, a small puncture, and the coyote can bleed out and die. And know that we have in California, we have a new legislation that limited the use of secondary anticoagulant rodenticides. But it doesn't mean there's still poisons out there. Pest control operators will often try to tell you that they're using safe poisons. Just know that there's no such thing as safe poisons. The ones we're using in California now, are they safer? We're still getting poisoned wildlife in constantly. So, the worst ones are gone, but there's still a lot of bad ones. And we're getting, I can't tell you, just so many poisoned animals in all the time. And like I said, poisoning, if you live on a small island, you may be able to poison your way out of a rodent problem, but it's not going to work in a city. So you're just killing for no reason. You're spending money for no reason. You need to use sanitation and exclusion. If you use those two things, you can fix your rodent problem. And if you want to contact me, if you are battling a rodent problem, I can give you names of effective, ethical businesses that can help you and do a great job instead of just dumping poison.
Another one for you, Kelly. Is there a way to be in the presence of a coyote so they don't feel threatened?
Anytime you're going to be in close contact with a coyote, you'll probably be nervous unless it's been fed by people. So I think that's a good thing. We really don't want coyotes to be super comfortable around people. It usually ends up bad for them. So watching coyotes from a distance, you can watch their natural behaviors, and you don't want to get to a point where you get in their bubble where they start acting nervous. But if you enjoy watching wildlife, getting a nice set of binoculars and enjoying them from afar is the best strategy.
Here's one for Spencer. In Golden Gate Park, are dogs required to be on leash?
Dogs are required to be on leash in all parks in our system. Yes. That's according to our park code. Yes, please abide by that rule at the risk of being ticketed.
Please, yeah, that's such an important thing. So many wild animals, it's just so much conflict, so many unnecessary attacks on dogs, unnecessary attacks on wildlife. If you want to let your dogs loose, use fenced dog parks, but in other areas, especially in spring and summer, please keep your dogs on leash. Everybody thinks their dogs aren't happy unless they're off leash, but they just like to be with you. They don't need to be off leash.
We've come to the end of most of the questions. Oh, go ahead.
Can I sorry, one caveat to my question, except when you're in a dog play area, you can leave your dogs off leash there.
We're getting to the end of our questions. So anything else that we haven't answered, I'll make sure I get answers and I'll post it on our website, sfanimalcare.org. Along with this presentation, we've recorded it, so it will be available hopefully tomorrow, so you can tell friends about it. Is there anything else anyone would like to share? Don't feed coyotes. biggest problem in San Francisco, don't feed them.
You're here.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think, Deb, you're signing us out. Is that right?
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.